The Honourable Simon Power.
Well, Mr Speaker, could I start by saying Happy New Year to all members in the chamber, and it's going to be a very interesting year ahead indeed. I do want to start briefly by making a couple of quick comments on the Labour Party reshuffle. See, Mr Speaker, I watched with some interest as to who had progressed, who had gone back, who had stayed in the same spot. It's always interesting from the other side to watch opposition reshuffles. I'd been involved in a few in my time. Mr Speaker, the thing that interested me is when we came down for the first question time on Tuesday, or rather the Prime Minister's statement, which I'll get to in a moment, I sat here and thought this will be interesting to see the new faces on the front 9 seats in the Labour Party. Much to my disappointment, nothing had changed. It was the same 9 faces that were there prior to Christmas, slightly altered in position, but by and large nothing had changed. Now, I don't want to cast any dispersions on Grant Robertson. I think he's probably got a pretty promising career, but in no one's book is sitting on the crossbenchers being on the front bench. And the Labour Party's attempt to sell their 2 new front benches as actually sitting on the crossbenchers, I'm afraid, doesn't cut any mustard at all. A couple of interesting observations. David Parker, up to number 4, an astute sort of a character who no doubt will make a strong contribution to the Labour Party lineup. In particular, I'm looking forward to Parker to lead campaign against asset sales, and we've now been in here for 2 question times. I don't think we've had a question from him yet. He asked for the job and got the job, we're told, Mr Speaker. Unfortunately, I don't think they told Clayton Cosgrove, who didn't seem to know anything about that particular delegation as opposition SOE spokesperson. Look, it's worth saying that there'll be some people on the other side disappointed. They'll be disappointed with the reshuffle, and it's worth just mentioning a couple of those as we pass by. HV Ross Robertson continues to be disappointed and underutilised by the Labour Party. In fact, I was sitting here before and couldn't see across the benches where his traditional sheepskin was going to be located with the new lineup. I see it now over there, slightly slumped down, not up with the usual pride that Ross Robertson would expect from his sheepskin rug there. I've got to say, it is rumoured, of course, that he deserved better. His majority and his seat alone would probably tally up to bigger than the majority of all of the Labour front benches parked up together, and it's a pity Labour doesn't realise or recognise those who are working hard on the ground. Other questions popped into my head, Mr Speaker. What happened to the promising Claire Curran? In fact, the upcoming Ashraf Chowdhury and the sturdy but reliable Rick Barker. What happened? What became of these reasonably hard-working characters during this particular reshuffle? What interested me the most, though, Mr Speaker, I've got to say, was during Phil Goff's reply to the Prime Minister's statement, how few of the Labour members lifted their heads to listen to what Phil Goff had to say. Everybody was very busy. Very busy. Lots of important paperwork, lots of correspondence that had to be dealt with. Heads were down, no one was looking, Mr Speaker. Apart from, to be fair, apart from the Honourable Darren Hughes' permanently transfixed glaze of adoration, everybody else was looking down and were absent from the debate. Clayton Cosgrove, good old Clayton Cosgrove, had to be pried from his seat to clap at the end of the particular debate, and frankly, Mr Speaker, Ruth Dyson thought Ethiopia was a better option. So who lost out, Mr Speaker? Who lost out? Well, apart from Mitarua Nui, who I see as almost as far back as Chris Carter now, the only person that really lost out from this reshuffle, and the members opposite in their heart of hearts know this, the only person who missed out was the Honourable Phil Goff. It's only a matter of time. National, on the other hand, under the stewardship of the Prime Minister in his statement, set out a clear and definitive path for the year ahead. A plan for growth, a plan for debt reduction, a plan for good use of capital versus what the other side have to offer, which is a 58% tax rate to try and pay for their uncosted promises with their borrow and hope strategy. Now, Mr Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to give the opposition and others a bit more explanation about the Prime Minister's statement with respect to the justice sector in the year ahead. Mr Speaker, members of the House and the public can expect the government to be focused on victims' rights during the course of 2011. They can expect to see amendments to current legislation in this area as we move to deal with matters that the last government got nowhere near. Under that government, Mr Speaker, victim impact statements were censored and edited. That will change when this government brings legislation to the House. Under this government, prosecution services will be talking, not leaving them on the sideline like happened under that government. Mr Speaker, under this government, more information will be made available to victims as they enter the courtroom, unlike under that government where victims were not told how processes worked or what was going on in a courtroom at any one time. Mr Speaker, the Drivers of Crime initiative will be continuing with a considerable degree of focus this year. And this year, Mr Speaker, this government is prepared to tackle the tough issues around how the justice system treats children. For too long, the justice system has been prepared to settle into a situation where an adversarial system, a pistols at dawn system for dealing with child witnesses and victims has been allowed to continue. That government, when they were in office, didn't deem it appropriate to deal with this issue at any time over the 9 years they were there. They were prepared to see children as victims and witnesses treated badly by the court because they weren't prepared to make the fundamental changes that were necessary. That's going to change under this government, starting with work this year. Mr Speaker, another area that concerns this government considerably is why it is that children and women in particular and other vulnerable parties are having to wait so long for matters to be resolved in the family court. In the family court, which saw in the last 5 years the number of cases heard by the family court increase by 7%, but costs increase by 43%, while when they were in government, they did nothing. They did nothing to look after those parties in our court system. That's all going to change under this government this year when we undertake a fundamental review of how the family court is operating to the benefit of those people. Under that government, Mr Speaker, children were waiting 15 months from the time an information was laid on an offence that they were involved with, either as victims or witnesses, were waiting 15 months before that matter was committed to trial, and that lot did nothing. They did nothing. And that is all going to change under this government. Expect to see further measures to protect children, to actually hold to account those parents and caregivers who live under the same roof as a child who is neglected or abused and take no responsibility for what is going on. That government did nothing about that issue for 9 years, Mr Speaker. This government will get on and legislate to make those homes safer for those children and women who suffer in that environment. Mr Speaker, this government has introduced safety protection orders and further measures around offender levies to make sure victims of crime get what they deserve and are treated with respect by the court system and the justice system, something that I have to say I was very disappointed to inherit such a legacy of ignoring such imperative and serious issues. Of course, the Parliament will deal this year with the criminal simplification legislation and, most importantly, legislation relating to alcohol. Mr Speaker, it's going to be a busy year ahead for the justice sector. Not only do we have many new initiatives, much drive and momentum and a big appetite for reform, we'll have to spend a lot of time cleaning up the mess left by that lot before the 2008 election.